right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to Superior Gold's live summit today, hosted by SIX. We're joined today by President and CEO Chris Jordan and CFO Paul Olmsted. Chris and Paul are going to walk us through a company presentation, and after we will be accepting questions live. So as a reminder, you can submit your questions at any time on the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of the screen, and we'll be sure to get to them after the presentation. And as always, the summit is being recorded and will be available to watch afterwards on six.com. But without any further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Chris, to get things started.
Thanks, Dasha, and good day to everyone, and thank you for joining both Paul and I to get an update on Superior Gold, and thank you for hosting the day, Dasha. As a reminder, please refer to slide 2 on our presentation, which is posted on our website. That's just to view our cautionary language regarding forward-looking statements. Also note that dollar amounts in this presentation are in US dollars unless otherwise stated. We can go to the next slide. Bit of background of Plutonic Mine. So Superior Gold is a TSXV listed gold producer and owns 100% of the Plutonic gold operations located in WA. The Plutonic gold operations include the underground mine, which is currently in operation, the Hermes open pit projects, and an 80% interest in the Bry Basin joint venture with Alchemy, and now also looking at the Plutonic main pit pushback project, which was recently announced on a PEA level. We hold a large prospective land package along the Plutonic Miramaya Gold Belt with several other gold deposits in close proximity to our existing infrastructure, which is one of our key strategic advantages. Plutonic is situated in one of the top mining jurisdictions in the world, according to the Fraser Institute. It's a world-class operating mine. Initially started with Barrick and with all the related infrastructure, and we'll show a few pictures about what that looks like today. The business has a clear and concise optimization and expansion plan, which is very simple, and I will share that with you in the next few slides. And it's endowed with significant mineral resource base, with certainly significant exploration upside, which has recently, over the last few quarters, we've presented on a quarterly basis our update on the exploration results, which has been very promising. Finally, one of the most compelling attributes is the re-rate opportunity we present compared to our peers. In order to achieve this, our re-rate strategy is to deliver 3 main goals. The first one is to turn the business into a safe, stable, and predictable operation. And, we're very glad to announce that we've hit an analyzed rate of just over 77,000 ounces in Q3 of this year, which is a significant uptick on the annualized rate of 60,000 ounces in Q2 of last year. The second piece of this strategy is to achieve a business of scale. We expect that to happen in 2 phases. Phase 1 being able to take the business up to 100,000 ounces per year by unlocking the potential in our open pits. And then in addition to that, looking at ore supply for the latent capacity in our milling circuit. We have a 1.2 million tons per annum mill, which is currently in care and maintenance, which certainly has the potential to accommodate oxide ore, so typically from open pits, to generate up to 60,000 ounces to our production profile. Of course, a key outcome of that strategy would be to have quite a significant reduction in cost, which is very important for us because we do not have any control of the gold price, and the gold price, although being very buoyant up to now, can certainly turn its back on operators. So it's absolutely a key goal of us that we want to achieve to reduce our cost. Last but not least, we will invest smartly in exploration. I've referred earlier to our properties that we have. It certainly has upside from an exploration perspective. Both underground and surface goals have been identified, and we've progressed quite fast, specifically on the underground, as we've added an additional drill rig a few months ago, and that is specifically focused on underground drilling. Just to give you an idea exactly where Plutonic operations are situated in WA. On the left-hand side, you can see there it's about 1,000 kilometres northeast from Perth. Our properties are positioned in the Miramaya Belt. The one on the right-hand side, you can see the red indicated areas where the Plutonic operations are, and then to the southwest, you would see there our Hermes open pit project, which is in purple, and then the 80% joint venture with Alchemy being the one circled in green. Moving to the next slide. This gives you a better idea as to what the infrastructure looks like. On the southwestern side, you can see the open pit, and then in grey, the current state of affairs insofar as the underground workings are concerned. So you can see it's quite extensive. On the right-hand side, towards the east, are the tailings dams, and also further east, the Plutonic East operation. That open pit we recently entered in May, and completed our workings there in September. We've now moved to the Perch open pit, which is just off the picture towards the south of the Plutonic East operations. Insofar as our strategy is concerned, as I said before, we targeting 3 goals that we want to achieve, and to achieve those 3 goals, we've got 4 enablers that we're going after. The first one is stabilizing our underground mine, and I think the last 2 quarters achieving in the high 70s annualized rate certainly is testimony to the strategy that we followed in unlocking the potential in the underground. There's certainly more potential in there, but for us now, that is where we are, and certainly supports the current rate of production. The second goal in building this business to a level of scale would require 2 things, and we've already started, as I said, entering the Plutonic East open pit. We will be entering other open pits, and we would expect higher grades to flow from there. So with the specific strategy to deliver on average 3 grams per ton from the underground, augmented by increased grade from the open pits, would certainly take us a long way towards delivering the 100,000 ounces. We certainly have the milling capacity in the current mill to be able to produce that. If we then add on additional feed, and we would expect that from external sources through, a number of opportunities, whether it's a tolling agreement or JV or outright buy of assets to get the second mill running, we would need about 1.2 million tons of ore, oxide ore, to get that mill to run at full tilt. And as I said, that would add another 50 to 60,000 ounces to our business. And the last one is, as I already referred to, is growing our business through the drill bit. At the current spend, we are within guidance. I would expect in time to come that we'll probably spend more insofar as exploration is concerned. We are very excited with the first surface drilling opportunities and targets that we're going after specifically on our properties, and we hope to give the market feedback early next year as to what the results are. In the meantime, we're still progressing on our underground drilling program, specifically in developing our understanding of new mining fronts to augment the feed of ore into the mill going into the future. If we move to the next slide. We're committed to mining responsibly and developing a diverse workforce, as we further enhance elements of ESG strategy. For example, our workforce comprises of people from across the world. Not only does that refer to our internal or full-time employees. In addition, we utilize an international ecosystem of specialists, especially on technically complex matters to drive innovation. There's one example, for instance, where we had people working on a project around the globe, 24 hours trying to deliver against a specific time deadline. And that's worked very well for us. In fact, it does create a significant flexibility insofar as supply of services and technical skill. Over the past 2 years, Plutonic has actively increased engagement with the Jidi and Jinjarana Aboriginal groups, who are the traditional landowners of the land on which we operate. Appropriate agreements have been put in place and have been established, and we continue to develop these agreements further as clear terms of engagement, more specifically and closer to home at the current stage, as we access specific land and need to do heritage surveys. Moving on to the next slide, talking about guidance for this year, and we've already indicated in the last production results that we're erring towards the upper end of our production guidance insofar as gold production is concerned, and that's towards the 75,000 ounces mark. We have, on a quarterly basis, shown that we can deliver against that, and we're confident that we will be heading towards that level of production. we would expect, as these production levels increase over time, to see our costs drop further from what we've given here in guidance. I think the key for us is to recognize is as we increase our throughput, we increase our efficiencies and, get significant fixed cost dilution and therefore cost benefits. Moving to the underground on the next slide. We're currently focused on unlocking the value of the underground because that's fundamentally the mainstay of the feed into the main mill at this moment. Firstly, we focused on optimizing our grade, and I referred to that getting stope grade of about 3 grams per ton, and we've been successful in achieving that and sustaining that over a number of quarters. In mining operations, we've revitalized our underground fleet with the addition of 2 new trucks and 2 loaders. In addition to that, over time, as it relates to the replacement strategy and end of life of pieces of equipment, we're very comfortable that we'll be able to finance that internally, and that's the process we're following there. At the mill, which operates very well, the recommissioning of the gravity circuit earlier this year has had a positive impact on our recoveries, increasing from the low 80s up to the mid 80s and even the higher 80s from time to time. Finally, the addition of a 3rd underground drill rig, which I referred to earlier, that is dedicated to expanding into new mining fronts, has resulted in some very promising results, and I will discuss that in more detail shortly. Moving on to the next slide that talks about our production as well as our financial position. It's a result we're very proud of. It certainly builds the base from which we can move to higher levels of production as we unlock the open pits and strengthen our delivery from the underground. One can see here we were operating at an annualized rate in Q2 of FY20 at about 60,000 ounces. In Q3, we achieved just over 77,000 ounces annualized rate. Certainly want to see that increase further towards 100,000 ounces over the foreseeable period. The significant impact it has had on our balance sheet and specifically our cash position is very clear there. And you can see we're currently sitting at about $20.5 million. I'd like to hand over to Paul. Paul, if you can allude a little bit and expand a little bit on our debt position and how that has augmented our financial position.
Sure, thanks, Chris. Just as you can see, the production increases over the last number of quarters has certainly had a significant impact on our net cash. Net cash is really defined as our cash on the balance sheet less any of the Auramet gold loan outstanding. At the end of June this year, we made the final repayment on our Auramet loan. So at this point, there's no term debt outstanding. And in that graph, the Q3 2021, $20.5 million US is all cash. So as we have really no term debt remaining outstanding, and that certainly had a significant impact on our balance sheet. Previous quarters at the current gold price, the Auramet loan repayment was costing us about $2.5 million US per quarter. So certainly, the improvements has allowed us to more flexibility to put money back into the operation for the drill bit.
Thank you very much, Paul. If we can jump to the next slide. Just a bit more information around our open pit. So during the second quarter of this year, the open pit commenced at Plutonic East. It was done on schedule. We've closed off that work in September. Perch is currently in operation, and that will be the main open pit that will feed ore to our mill over the next 2 quarters. That'll be Q4 this year and Q1 of next year. Production from these open pits plus longer term, the main pit pushback, along with the operation improvements from the underground, is expected to increase our production, return Plutonic operations to a state of significant free cash flow and generation, cash flow generation. As we can see, we're really reaping the benefits of the work that primarily has been done in the underground, but also unlocking the potential of our open pit opportunities. Talking about the main pit pushback, just a few highlights there. This is a project that has been developed up to PEA level, so it's still early days, but a few key features. We're looking at about $82 million of capital to be spent to get the main pit pushback done in the current design. We're looking at about 360,000 ounces at a very low all-in sustaining cost coming in. The intent there is to add an additional 60,000 ounces from that open pit over 6 years once it is in operation. One of the challenges that we put to our technical team is to consider potential early entry targets within the current open pit. Of the 3 areas that were identified during the opportunity review, 2 are currently being developed further, and we hope to update the market in due course as to what the outcome of that study would be. In essence, what it does is draw ounces of the open pit earlier without sterilizing the full ambit of the opportunity within the open pit, but also to bring it forward much faster at a significantly lower initial capital investment compared to the main pit pushback. And then moving to the next slide, this gives us a bit of insight as to what the potential is of the business from an installed capacity perspective. At different head grades, with 1 mill operating, 98,000 ounces is up for grabs. If we start the second mill, they adds another 55,000 ounces in there, once again, depending on the grade that we feed. And then at different head grades, you can see what the potential is from a production perspective. So certainly this highlights the fact that we have the internal latent capacity in our milling circuit to be able to produce at the levels that we referred to earlier. Now moving to the exploration information, just a bit of an update there. Now this slide highlights many of the high-grade drill results that we've intersected since acquiring Plutonic. It's clear that Plutonic is a very large, underexplored mineralized system and certainly has a lot more potential going into the future. The challenge for us now is to make sure that we not only finance this exploration, but make sure that we progress our exploration in areas which is informed by our improved understanding of the spatial positioning of the ore, specifically in the ground. If we can go to the next slide, insofar as historic step-out drilling, this slide is a reminder that there are significant intercepts in close proximity of the current infrastructure, as well as ore-grade intercepts located 1 kilometre outside the mineralised mafic. It should be clear that the limits of mineralisation have yet to be found, and we continue our investment and would expect that investment to increase over time into these specific opportunities that have been identified. We have a comprehensive exploration program delivering some really excellent results. I think worthwhile pointing out in this slide is the target areas identified there in red, where you can see where the drilling has been done, and the intent is to take that drilling closer into the western mining front, and we would expect that would prove up to be the next major mining area for the underground for the future. If we go to the next slide, insofar as resource and reserve are concerned, since we acquired Plutonic, we've increased our reserves by 101%, measured and indicated resource by 124, and inferred by 284. I think the challenge that we're dealing with here is the relationship between our resource and reserve. However, the technical work in doing the form interpolation, which is just the technology and approach and process we use to better understand the spatial positioning of our ore body, has certainly enabled us, and we're in that process to redefine and optimize the block model for the resource, and therefore there will be subsequent work done around scheduling and planning to firm up our position insofar as reserves are concerned. We would expect that information to be made public towards the end of Q1 next year, if not very early in Q2 next year. That forms a good segue into upcoming catalysts. I think what I'd like to also highlight there would be, finalizing the outcome of our opportunity review, or like we call it, the full potential assessment, and understanding what the next level of detail and granularity in the strategy would be to enable this business to go up to 100 and 150,000 ounces over time. We'd also be able to provide regular updates of our exploration, and we typically do that mid-quarter, 4 times a year. We go to the next slide. From a capital structure perspective, I'd like to again, hand over to Paul, our CFO, to take you through the capital structure of the business. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, at this point, we have about 122.7 million shares outstanding, with another 14.4 million acquisition warrants. Those warrants will likely expire in February next year. Barring a significant increase in the share price, they're priced around $2 Canadian. So our share structure will tighten in February next year. Current market cap is around 70 to 75 million Canadian, and we announced our cash position at the end of September of 20.5 million US, and so that, based on the current market cap, that kind of represents about 30 to 35% of our market cap at this point. We're followed reasonably well by a number of analysts, and have certainly a number of key shareholders that are part of the shareholdings. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much. If we jump to the last slide, I think what I really want to talk to you here around the revaluation opportunity is just reminding everyone about what our key strategy is. Once again, 3 goals, 4 enablers. Ultimately, first and foremost, to stabilize the business, to make sure that it's safe and that we can, or the market can expect predictable levels of operation out of the business. The second piece is about delivering the business to a level of scale at 100 and 150,000 ounces as we unlock the full potential of not only our own ore body, but also ore bodies in the region, and capitalizing on the strategic positioning of the assets, and adding external feed into the second mill, which will take us to 150,000 ounces per annum. Of course, as I said, that will ultimately also enable a reduction in cost as we increase the throughput and achieve further fixed cost dilution in the business. And then lastly is growing smartly through investment in our exploration activity, and we've alluded a lot to what we've achieved up to now, and it certainly warrants further investment going forward. We're absolutely focused on repositioning the Plutonic for long-term success and unlocking the shareholder value. And we certainly encourage people to have another look at this opportunity. Dasha, thank you very much. That concludes our presentation.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to transition over to the live Q&A. I see a lot of questions have been coming in, but Chris, with the 20.5 million cash on hand as of Q3 2021, what are your anticipated plans with the money?
Well, it's in fact putting us in a very good position to consider opportunities. When I joined the organization, we started off a full potential assessment through what we call an opportunity review, whereby we've taken all the ideas and options, and a few new ones that Tamara built up, who was our interim CEO prior to me joining, during the strategic review process, and making sure which of these opportunities are the ones that we're going to preserve for the future, which of those ones are we going to develop further because we need more information or better understand it, and ultimately what of those opportunities are the ones that we're going to go after and implement immediately. That process is nearing its end. That will certainly, at the end of the day, determine, will give us much better insight as to where where the cash flow would be allocated. I think at this stage, I've already alluded to it, one would probably see further investment in our exploration work, and we've already started with that as we now expanding our exploration into surface drilling. And there's a number of other opportunities, of course, that we'd land on over the next few weeks as we set ourselves up for the next year.
Great, thank you. And what will be the next producing mine in Superior Gold's portfolio? And if you can share more details on that.
Yeah, so we just entered Perch, which is an open pit mine just south of Plutonic East. We're looking at a number of options insofar as the next open pit is concerned. Hermes South comes to mind, early entry into the main open pit, as I referred to during the presentation, which is also potentially up for grabs. In addition to that, we are reconsidering a number of previously mined open pit opportunities around Hermes, which might be short period entry opportunities. But the mainstay of feed over the next 6 months, we would expect that to be Perch from an open pit perspective.
Great, thank you. So Eric has a question here. He's asking, with more availability of vaccines in Australia, have you been able to start the heritage surveys on Hermes South and the Plutonic main pit pushback?
Those specific heritage surveys are scheduled for this quarter.
Great. Okay, thank you. And Ralph is asking, how does the drastic shutdowns in Australia affect your operation? Are the mines currently working?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been very blessed with a team that's been very adaptable to and agile in responding to various lockdowns, specifically here in WA. The benefit we have now is that a very large contingent of our workforce, if not all, reside around the Perth area, which makes it very easy for us to adjust our FIFO cycles, depending on what the challenges are that's being thrown at us. I have to say the state government has been very supportive for FIFO operations in WA, and we're reaping the benefits from that.
Great. Vander is asking, what is your vision on the production target next year? 1,500,000 ounces. On what AISC do you want?
So we're in the process now of finalising our budget for next year, which will put us in a good position to be able to share those targets. Unfortunately, I won't be able to share that information because I still need to get the board across the line insofar as what we're going to commit to. But I can assure you that work is currently underway. We're very close on locking down what the sequencing of the open pits would be, what the target production for the underground will be, and ultimately what the grade feed to the process plant would be. And that will give us a direct indication as to what the production target would be for next year.
Okay, thank you. Jason is asking, could underground possibly be expanded enough to fill the second mill?
Well, I think at the end of the day, one would need to look at the specific design of the second mill. The second mill is designed for oxide ore. Typically, the ore coming from the underground is non-oxide, so our first mill is really designed to take the underground ore, and that's why it's currently in operation. I would expect that the underground, and we're certainly going to try and increase production from the underground to feed into the first mill, but it's not the intent to use that ore for the second mill. The second mill will most probably only operate on primarily open pit ore.
Okay, thank you. Vander is asking if we can get a share price of 5 Canadian in the next few coming years, and what is a fair price now of the shares, and then goes on to say that he is very fond of the mine and that Tamara did a wonderful job.
Yeah, I also think Tamara did a fantastic job, to be quite honest. She certainly handed me, as one of our analysts said, a smorgasbord of opportunities. It's like a playpen full of toys, and we just need to decide which of those toys we're going to play with. But it's a serious game we're at. But I think I'd like to hand over that question to Paul, if you can field that, mate.
I think we'd all like a share price of $5. I think if we continue to do what we are doing and meet all of these projects that Chris had outlined, certainly I think we're moving in the right direction. So I think a $5 share price is something to shoot for in the longer term.
I think if I can add to that, it's understanding what the market is looking for, and it's not a singular thing; it's a number of things. Safe and stable operations is the absolute mainstay for a re-rate. The second one is demonstrating that we can commit to a growth strategy and we deliver it. And when we say we're going to deliver it, part and parcel of that would be to create further headroom between our production cost and the gold price, which, if you look at our guidance, certainly doesn't make one excited. But what we are seeing is, as we increase the production out of our process plant and delivery from the underground, that we are reaping the benefits from lower costs. And in addition to that, adding the additional ounces from the second mill will further augment that. We would expect, as we increase production from our current levels at about 77,000 ounces annualized up to 100,000 ounces, that a large part of those additional ounces will only come in at variable cost, which automatically will give us quite a significant reduction in our all-in sustaining cost. That's our expectation at this stage. From an opportunity review perspective, we're also looking at options to reduce costs, just take out costs in specific areas, and there's a number of opportunities that have been identified there. But once again, the biggest lever would be to increase the production to a level that's commensurate to our fixed cost base.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is, what is the timing on moving to the Western Mining Front?
Exactly when that timing is going to be a function of the available ore in our remnant mining operations as we're currently mining. There's certainly a lot more value there that we can glean from the current way of operating. In setting ourselves up for the Western Front would require further drilling. We've done the first round of drilling. We would expect a number of drill fronts to be developed to better understand and firm up that specific part of the mine. That work we expect to do next year, and then ultimately that will feed into the production profile of the mine. Exactly when that's going to happen is not clear at this moment. We need to get our drill results and do the necessary drill development to be able to get to that point.
Great, okay. Ragnar is asking, is the underground equipment electric?
No, they're diesel powered.
Thank you. Steve's question is, if you can go into the main pit early, could you internally finance the big pushback?
Well, I think the principle there is to get cash out of the open pit earlier. That's why the early entry is really enticing. It's certainly going to take less capital to do the early entries because the areas that we're going to go into are areas that are quite easily accessible. Exactly what that benefit is going to be is currently being defined. That will certainly augment our cash position because from the current drill results that we already have from the operations from the open pit, it certainly shows improved grade from that open pit as opposed to some of the other open pits that we get. So yes, it will improve our cash flow. Will it fully pay for the full open pit? It's certainly going to be a significant contributor, I would think.
Great, thank you. Hugo's asking, do you have other metals in your mines?
No, not that I'm aware of. Typically, gold and copper would run together from time to time. If you look at other gold deposits in Australia, in our case, no.
Okay, thank you. Our next question here is, how is the level of the underground stope inventory compared to Q2? Is it higher, lower, or keeping pace?
I think it's increasing. Are we happy with the level of inventory? No, we would like it to be more, but that will be a function of the spatial or understanding of the spatial positioning of the ore body. That work is emerging. As I said, the first piece of the work has been completed. It's certainly starting to have an impact on the size of the stopes, the timing of the stopes, the access towards the stopes, and would probably drive towards less stopes but larger stopes in time. So we would see a gradual movement from where we are now, moving into a position where we can get the full benefits from the technical work that's been done in the past.
Great, thank you very much. Vendor's asking, are there any interested parties to take you over?
Well, I think, being a listed entity, all listed entities are for sale at the right price. I think the approach that we follow there is, at the appropriate time, if it makes, if conversations are developed to a point by which it's announceable, the market will be informed of such conversations. So we certainly stick to the rules and regulations. That's, we need abide to. Paul, anything that you would like to add in that space?
No, I think, as everyone's aware, we went through a strategic process that started in the middle of last year, and it culminated with the hiring of Chris as the new CEO to move the company forward.
Thank you. John's asking, when will you complete the 2022 mine plan, and what specific areas of the underground and surface will be exploited?
We need to submit our budget in December, so that'll be done by then. That work is currently underway, as I referred to earlier. There's 4 main areas that we're identifying for mining for next year, and that'll be Baltic, Area 134, Timor, and Indian. Those areas will be the mainstay of our feed from the underground. From an open pit perspective, as I said, we would expect Perch to roll over into FY22. We then, as I said, a number of options that we're currently working on to see how they were going to sequence and how they're going to fit in with each other. We're looking at about 60,000 tonnes per month from open pit feed. So we're looking at Hermes South, early entry into the main pit, and there's a few other interesting opportunities that we're also looking on our own property as potential feed as we set ourselves up for the main pit pushback, or early entry into the main pit pushback, which ultimately in time and over a much longer period will be the mainstay of our open pit feed to the current mill.
Thank you. John's asking, what are the terms and duration of your natural gas contracts?
Paul, do you want to allude to that? That's a question we got earlier about a week ago, so
Sure.
You can certainly answer that question quickly.
I guess in terms of the detail, we don't typically provide the detail given most of them are confidential, but I can say that we certainly recognize the tightening of the gas market earlier this year and extended all of our contracts out for close to 3 years. So I think I think we're in reasonable shape on gas prices for the foreseeable future.
Great, thank you. Bob's question is, what is the potential to increase UG mining at Plutonic? Can it go back to filling the main mill like it used to at twice the current production?
It's certainly our intent to open for, additional mining fronts. Exactly what those increments are, I think from a theoretical perspective, we would look at first taking a step to stabilize it at 1 million tonnes per annum, and then potentially looking at, over time as we develop new mining fronts, moving from, 4 main areas to potentially 6 main areas over time, take it up to 1.5 million tonnes. But that planning work is still underway. Exactly where it's going to land is not known at this stage. What I can say, there is no doubt that the biggest financial benefit lever that we can pull to take our organisation forward is to maximise ore feed from the underground.
Great, thank you. So the next question is for you, Chris. Duke is asking, since coming on board, what has surprised you, both positively and negatively?
I think the one thing that really struck me is a positive attitude and a can-do attitude of people in the operations. The extent to which they can, in a very agile manner, adapt to situations that we often find ourselves in, specifically on the mining front, has been exemplary. I think the other thing that's really struck me as a positive is the ability of the process plant to adapt to the feed coming from the mine. I mean, we moved from historical stockpiles into Plutonic East, and a few months later now into Perch, and the process plant and the team there is really adaptive to changing the setup and the process plant, which bodes really well. We've seen the benefits both on throughput, which has increased over the last few months, and in addition to that, I'm holding on to really strong recoveries from that perspective. So that on the positive side, I think I wouldn't look at things that would upset me. I think what's more important is what are the opportunities. There's no doubt there's significant opportunity for further exploitation of our open pits. There's definitely opportunity to run the business safer. We do not have an exemplary safety performance record, and in fact, today we commissioned our people safety and risk transformation program, with the whole management team being here in Perth. I was there in person as well, together with our VP operations. And we're going to lead the charge from the front insofar as improving our safety performance and taking full responsibility for that.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's a great note to leave off on because that is all the time we have for today. So I want to thank you both, Chris and Paul, for taking us through the presentation and the Q&A. And thank you to everyone who attended and asked great questions. If we didn't get a chance to answer your question during this live summit, we will make sure we follow up directly and answer your questions over email. But of course, feel free to reach out to Superior Gold. Their contact email and number is on the slide here. You can also find more information on their website, superior-gold.com. And of course, this was being recorded, so you can watch it again afterwards on 6.com. But before we close off, I'll just pass it back to you for any final words, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been looking at some of the questions coming through. There's one specific question that I'll take offline, and that's related to our positioning for future feed for the second mill. Maybe I could field that now, Dasha, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think it's a critical and a very important question because it forms fundamentally part of our strategy to unlock the potential up to 150,000 ounces by starting the second mill. There's two changes that has happened specific in the region that we're operating. Some of the businesses in the area has certainly played their cards in the last few months insofar as what their primary goal is with their assets and where their attention is going to be, and that potentially is opening opportunities for us, and those conversations is certain conversations that we're progressing. In addition to that, our position from a financial perspective certainly puts us in a much better driving position insofar as looking at opportunities of acquiring additional assets or putting up JV agreements with other operations. I think there's certainly more reliability that we're putting out there in the region insofar as our ability to successfully and cost effectively treat ore. So I think that will be two key elements in our consideration insofar as getting more confidence in securing feed from other opportunities.